Maybe art school wasn't for me. Maybe I shouldn't have followed my dreams. I've had no luck finding any jobs. Maybe art is really free. Maybe you just need to see. Maybe dreams do come true. Maybe college was worth it. How can we know? We'll never know unless we take a chance.
On December 19th, 2024, I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in fine arts and illustration. That degree was one of the hardest things I've ever had to obtain. I had to go through a lot of stress, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears just to get to that degree. And looking back, it was definitely worth it. But in this video, I'm going to be giving my full and honest opinions on whether or not it's a good option for other people to pursue an art degree. Is it worth it to be an art student? The answer is complicated, because for me it was worth it, but there are definitely a lot of things that I regret or things I wish I had done better. But for many, it could be worth it. It really depends. I know some people came to this video expecting like a, really concrete answer, like yes, no. I'm gonna say it's mostly yes, but again, it really depends on like your situation financially and emotionally and whatnot. Because if you're not someone who's in a position where you're okay with some debt, or you're able to like afford college, then yeah, it's probably worth it. But if you can't afford college, or if you're like not in a good place, then I don't recommend being an art student, because it's very stressful. It's a lot, it's very intense. And also, I'm going to give a disclaimer that I did not go to like a fancy schmancy art school. I went to a regular university. First, I went to a community college, and then I went to a four-year university, but I did it where I split it in two, so I got my associate's degree for 2 years, and then I transferred to a four-year university, and then I spent 3 years there, and that's where I got my bachelor's degree. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I don't want people to get the impression that I was like an art student at like a fancy art school, because even though there are similarities between being an art student at a regular college and at an actual art school, I will say that they are different in a lot of ways. So I just want to make that clear, that some things people experienced at like Cal Arts, for example, is going to be different from how I experienced my college experience as an art student. So I just want to make that clear. And in the title, college or is going to school for art worth or whatever. So I don't want people to get the wrong idea. Anyway, I'm going to be answering a bunch of questions that were asked in May. So these questions are all in like giant clumps of comments. So each comment has a bunch of questions. I'm going to be answering them. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Now let's go on to the questions. So this question is asking how I felt about art from just a hobby to making money. I'm going to be honest, it definitely did change my view on art, but I still want to pursue it as a career, because I think that going to art school really is like the ultimate test of whether or not like it's worth it for you. Like if you go to art school or a regular college for art, this is going to be the test to know if this is truly your passion or if it's just a hobby and you want to do something else. Because for some people, that's when they realize, oh, I don't want to do this as a career, because it's a lot of hard work. Like you gotta do a lot. It's not just the drawing or whatever that you gotta do. You also gotta like do business stuff, which a lot of artists do not like. It seems to be like an oddly taboo thing in the art community to not talk about like business stuff too much, like taxes. Like for some really bizarre fucking reason, taxes was just like avoided. It just seemed like there was like this gatekeepy, sort of ominous things surrounding taxes and finances and all that. Like it took me years before professors started to actually talk about it, and I don't know why, but I guess it's because when it comes to art, people just kind of assume that it's like easier, or it's like whatever, artists just aren't great with numbers. I guess that's like the stereotype. So yeah, like it did change my views, because it made me realize that yeah, this is serious. I gotta like lock in. I can't just goof off. It's not going to be just me having fun all the time. I gotta like be organized. I gotta do all this like businessy type stuff, and it made me realize that, yeah, you know what? If I gotta do all that just to do the fun stuff, then yeah, I guess it's worth it. And I recall this one person in my class, he started off like, yeah, I'm going to be an artist or blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the semester, he was like, you know what? This isn't for me as a career, but I still want to make art. And, you know, I think a lot of people in the art community are afraid of admitting that they don't want to pursue art as a full-time career because being an artist is so idealized and so romanticized that the idea of not being an artist, especially when you're really good at it and when you enjoy it, just seems scary. But frankly, there is a lot of benefits to just having art as a hobby and doing it as like a side hustle and just doing it for fun, because having like a well-paid job and being able to do art on the side has its benefits of just being able to make art for fun and not having to worry about finances if you got a good job. So there's that as well. So it does scare me in some ways, knowing that like if I want to be a full-time artist, I'm gonna have to struggle a lot unless I get really lucky, or I'm going to have to like realize that I'm gonna have to do a lot more work just to be able to support myself. But like, I want to do it because this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I've always dreamed of. So yeah, it's definitely something that you're gonna have to reflect on a lot, and it's taken me a lot of reflecting to do, to realize that I guess this is what I want to do and I enjoy it. It's what I'm passionate about. It's gonna be hard, but if this is what I want to do and this is what makes me truly happy, then it's worth it. So that's how I feel. On to the next question. Now this is asking about if it was easier to make friends than in college than in high school, and kind of, I feel like in college people are a lot more chill and more open about themselves. Bullying is not really as common. I mean, it's sure it's a thing, but like people are more open about being themselves, especially if you're an art student. Art students are like the people you're going to see the most being like open with being themselves, being alt and stuff. So it's a lot easier to make friends with people because they're more open about what they're interested in. People are more chill in college in general, because like when you're in college, no one gives a shit about like popularity, because college campuses are so big and there's so much going on that you're not gonna know who's who. You know, I went to like a pretty big school. There's like thousands of people there, so like popularity and like all that high school hierarchy crap, that goes away in college. So it's a lot easier to make friends with people because everyone's just open. And you know, once you reach adulthood, you kind of grow out that whole teenage mindset of like worrying about what other people think about you, unless you're like me and you still got self-esteem issues. But regardless, it is a lot easier to make friends in college just because people are more chill. And I definitely have made friends. I joined the anime club once I transferred to my four-year university, and that's where I made all these friends with people, and I hung out with them a couple of times on campus. This question is asking if it's recommended to have a decent art following before becoming a student. No, you really don't need to have an art following to be like an art student. You just need to have a good portfolio. Like, I mean, it would be nice to have a good following, but like you really do not need to have like 10k followers on Instagram to be like a good art student or to have a good portfolio. I've seen people who've had like 100 followers and they've got like a great portfolio, but then some people, they just don't post much. But yeah, they also asked about getting a minor in something else, and I do think that you should, because it's always good to have a backup plan, because art is a very finicky major, and if you're like, man, I don't know if this art thing's gonna work out, then having like a backup plan, which is what I did not have because I'm stupid, is definitely helpful. Like having something that's more financially stable, like, I don't know, something medical, I guess, I don't know, like having something that's like more stable or outside of art is definitely good, because it like allows you to have a backup plan and allows you to like do something else if the art thing doesn't work out, or if you realize that you don't want to do art as like a full-time career. So yeah, having a minor is definitely very helpful. Next question. Oh boy. Yes, it is very, 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 very stressful. Being an art student is super stressful. And oh my gosh, my heart goes out to animation students especially. They have it the worst. Being an animation student is probably like the most stressful thing ever. And I only got a fraction of what that's like, because it's required, I guess, for like, it's required that you have to take at least like a couple of animation classes when you're getting a art degree. And yeah, it's hard. Like, animation is fun. I realized that animation for me is just not my thing. Like, sure, it's definitely fun, but like, I'm perfectly fine with doing like really small things, or like, you know, something that's more like traditional, I guess. I'm not really a big fan of doing computer animation, but yeah, like animation is hard. And that's when I realized that, yeah, I'm just not built for animating. But yes, it's so stressful because the deadlines really build up, especially when you're in other classes that are like non-art related. Like imagine having like 2 essays due, and then you've got like a huge ass painting due all in like the same week or within like the next 2 weeks. That's gonna definitely weigh on your mind a bit, because you're gonna be like, oh, did I finish the essays? Did I work on the painting? And then you go back and forth, and especially if it's like an oil painting. Oh my gosh, I was stressing out so much when I was doing oil painting. Oil painting is also its own stressor, but anyway, that's another thing. Do not slack off when it comes to painting. When you have to take one of those painting classes, do not slack off, because it's gonna be so obvious if you're like rushing when it comes to painting. Digital art, you can kind of slack off a little bit, but traditional painting, no. You gotta like be on top of that, because it's gonna be really hard to like do last minute shit when you're painting. But anyway, yeah, I think that stress is going to be the biggest negative aspect of being an art student, because you're going to have a lot of nights where you're going to be up even when you want to sleep. You're going to be finishing things super last minute, even if you tried your best to time manage. You're just going to be doing a lot of stuff. You're going to be really stressed out, because being an art student is just hard, because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of planning, it's a lot of creative processes going on. So I do recall getting burnt out pretty frequently. Like I would be like really stressed out and just not in the mood to draw a lot of the time when I would come home from school. Because that's another thing, like drawing for me is relaxing, but it's hard to relax when you're like, oh, I have art homework, I have to draw for school, and then I gotta draw for fun like after to calm me down, but then I end up playing video games. So that's usually like how I racked up so many hours of video games, because I was like, I can't draw right now, I need to do something that's like not art related. So that's another thing to mention. You're probably going to hate drawing at some point, because you're going to be so burnt out from like all the art you have to make that you're going to be like, I hate this so much. I need to take a break. I need to do something else. And that's where you got to find all the other outlets. You got to find other hobbies to keep you like, afloat, because yeah, it does get pretty stressful, especially the final projects. That tends to be the most stressful, especially if you have like other art classes as well, or if you got like other non-art classes. Again, if you're taking a class where you gotta write essays, that's gonna be like super intense. So yeah, it's not fun, it's very stressful, but I mean, I learned time management, so that's a positive. Anyway, moving on to the next question. Okay, so this is a funny question, and it's asking if I've had any beef with professors. Now, I'm going to try to keep this brief, but I have had beef with, like, 3 professors. The first professor, I don't want to say I hate her, but I do not like her that much, because she screwed me over. So, long story short, around the time when COVID was, like, peaking, I got COVID, and I had to stay home from school, and the professor had to, like, give me this alternate thing to do, because I couldn't be on campus. And she made me like draw this stuff in like my sketchbook or whatever, and I will admit that I slacked off on this sketchbook thing, because in this class I had to do like a sketchbook drawings or whatever, but I didn't really do it because I was being lazy and I kind of forgot. So I kind of scrambled to get a lot of stuff done, and by the end of the semester she gave me an F. Somehow I managed to pass the class, but she gave me an F on my sketchbook, and I was so pissed off, because I'm like, look, I'm not expecting special treatment, but like, girl, I'm at home with COVID. Everyone in my family has COVID. And you're out here like, oh, you get an F for your sketchbook. I didn't even get like a D or a C. No, I got an F. It was ridiculous. But anyway, the other professor I had beef with was a professor who I would just describe as like just very hippie-like. She was just all over the place, and the class was just so unpopular with a lot of my other classmates that like people would just straight up not show up. We had a group chat thing going on, and a lot of people would say like, yeah, I just don't feel like coming to class. And like I remember one class, barely anyone showed up, to the point where the professor was like, okay, class is canceled, and then we went home. And I was just like, oh, okay, I wasted my time coming here. And like mind you, I live like 25 to 30 minutes away from that school, so I had to go all the way back just for this to be there for like 5 minutes to be told that like class was canceled because barely anyone showed up. That was so annoying. But yeah, she was also assigning a lot of stuff, and this was like a lower level class, so it was like a class for like newer students, and she just giving us all this work to do and making us write these like mini essays and shit. I was just like, girl, why are we doing this? So she was just not a very popular professor. And then the third professor I beefed with, she was nice in the beginning, but she just overall got progressively more persnickety and snippy. And by the end of the semester, she was just so mean for some reason. I was like, girl, what's going on? The only thing I could theorize is that she got like an injury in her like ankle. And I'm guessing maybe she just got really cranky with the pain. Cause like, I don't know what else is causing her to be so snippy. I think maybe she was just really like snippy person in general, because sometimes she would just say certain things, or someone would say something, she would just get really annoyed. I was like, okay, relax, goodness. So I was just like, I felt like I had to walk on eggshells around her a little bit, but because I'm like a quiet, relatively respectful student, I don't think I'm ever going to get in her bad side. So yeah, those are the professors I had beef with. And this person also asked another question about experience and how it changed me as a person. College changed me in the way that like it made me perceive art. I already mentioned the other question, but like it made me perceive art in a different way. It expanded my mind, and it made me realize I have so many more options and I have so many things I could do rather than limiting myself. But also it sort of like made me realize like what I really want to do with myself in life, and also gave me a lot of skills that I didn't have before. Like time management was something that I wasn't the best at, and once I learned how to manage my time and learn how to like prioritize things, that's what I realized, okay, that's a good skill I learned. Also, it just improved my art in general. Like if you saw how my art looked from like beginning of college to now, there's a huge jump. And like I would say in my senior year of high school, I was pretty good, but like digitally, it was awful. But like once I learned other things and got exposure to other programs and stuff, my art definitely like had a leap in quality. Like my early Photoshop art was just really shitty because I was just so struggling so much with like digital art. But once I got the hang of it, and once I stopped overusing brushes for texture, I was like doing pretty well for myself. So I definitely learned a lot traditionally and digitally. I learned a lot of skills that I didn't have before. Like I got really good at painting. I never really painted up until like college. Like I did paint, but like it was mainly in school, and back in the high school it was like everything was provided for me, so I didn't like paint outside of school. The only paint that I used was watercolor, and my watercoloring skills were awful. They were awful when I was in high school. Like, ugh, it was so bad. But like once I got to college, it improved immensely. I remember this watercolor class I took. That's when my watercolor skills like rocket shooted up a bit, because that's when I learned all these techniques. And then I also think I took a color theory class in the summer as well that also improved my color theory skills. So yeah, I gained a lot of like artistic experience, and also like I learned new materials that I never used before. Like I never used oil. And I would say I'm pretty decent at oil, but I do not like oil. It's like my least favorite painting medium. I like acrylic better and watercolor. I've never used gouache, but one day I'd like to try gouache. I've heard a lot of people that say it's kind of like a mix of like acrylic and watercolor, so it seems fun. But yeah, like I definitely got better at painting. Digital art got better at, again, as I mentioned. Animation is something that's like kind of an up and down thing. It's a constant battle because I'm just like so iffy with animation. I did learn a little bit of 3D, but it did not carry over for me because I do not have enough space on my laptop to really do much 3D, so whatever. But that's fine. Like I'm not really sure if I want to do 3D art. I mean, it would be cool, but like it's just one of those things where it's like I'm not sure if I want to do that, you know? But it gave me options. College gave me options to do things rather than just like, if I had not gone to college, I would have been stuck using the same program and I would have been using the same materials. I might have opened up to other things if I had watched more YouTubers, because that's another thing that inspired me was YouTube. Like a lot of YouTubers I watched inspired me to get certain supplies. Like I remember I would get like supplies because I would see YouTubers using Copic markers, and I remember this one artist, I got these like aqua brush pens for watercolor because I saw her using them. I was like, oh, I want to use that too. So if I didn't go to college, YouTubers might have inspired me, but I think that college would inspire me way more to like gain experience with like artistic stuff. So yeah. And in general, as a person, I think college definitely like changed me for the better, but unfortunately I won't go into it, but there was a lot of like horrific stuff happening in my personal life that made college really difficult. And honestly, if there's one thing I wish, is that I wish I could go back and like redo to college, or at least like the fun parts, and like not have to deal with all the personal crap going on, because I think that's what contributed to like my stress and why sometimes it was really hard to get stuff done, was because I was just going through it, and like my whole life was just crappy, and it was making it difficult to enjoy college, but at the same time it was an escape for me. But now that I'm still dealing with a lot of the crap going on, it's really hard to like not have like an escape place to go to. It's not fun it's not easy to like not have a place where you can like focus on like a project or whatever. Now I have to actually be here to deal with it, and have to do art as like kind of a coping thing when I'm not dealing with whatever is going on at home. So yeah, it sucks in a lot of ways, but I mean, it's whatever, you know. I guess I've started to cope a little bit better, but not by much. But yeah, so college does change you as a person. You do mature in a lot of ways, and you do make a lot of dumb mistakes, which is what I did. But you learn and you grow, and that's the fun part, you know. That's basically what being a young adult's all about. Next question. So this is asking about like a bunch of stuff like mental health and living situation, blah blah blah. So I already mentioned that mentally college was just very stressful, and it did affect me a lot of ways, like emotionally and whatnot. So I'm not gonna go in depth with that because I already mentioned that. But a living situation, I won't go in depth with that. It was pretty blah. The only way college affected my previous friendships was that we just grew distant. Like all my friends from high school, with the exception of like one person, I'm still like close with, because everyone else, we all drifted apart. For the better, because that friend group from high school was just really toxic, so I'm kind of glad that I'm not friends with them anymore. But yeah, everyone I knew from high school, I'm not friends with anymore. Nothing personal, you know, just drifting apart, going to different schools and whatnot. You know, when it comes to high school, like a lot of people that you know, you're probably going to drift apart from them once you go to college, unless you're like really tight knit. So yeah, I mean, I made new friends, so I mean that's a good thing. Anyway, so I was expected to make different kinds of art, you know. In your first 2 years, you're not really going to be making art that's like the fun type, like the art you want to make in your style. You're going to be making art that's like, you could say the boring art, you know, the realism, the still lives, the self-portraits and whatnot. So prepare for that if you're like are not a big fan of realism or anything like that, because that's where you're going to be doing a lot of your fundamentals. What some people are like, oh, what's the point? I already know how to do art. But like, it's good for building things, because a lot of people who go into art college, sometimes they have like the skills, but they don't have like a lot of foundational skills because they're like self-taught. And when you're self-taught, you do lack in some areas like perspective. Oh my goodness, it is a rite of passage as a art student in college, so you're going to have to do the sitting out on the hallway floor doing perspective drawings in the hallway. Like, that is a rite of passage. You're going to have to do that probably in charcoal or pencil. It happens to everybody. You're going to have to do it at some point. It's not fun, but you got to get it over with. And yeah, perspective isn't fun, but yeah, that's like one of the things that you got to do. It's like so annoying, but that's definitely something I recall doing. It's like a core memory at this point. So yeah, but as you get older and once you're like a junior/senior, that's when you get to do your regular style stuff, and that's when you get to do all the fun stuff, because that's when everything's more personally driven, and that's when stuff is more about like what you want to do rather than like what you have to do and like fundamental things. The next question is about if the professors and students were okay with LGBTQ plus stuff. And yeah, I mean, generally speaking, colleges are pretty open, unless you go to like some super like conservative college. But yeah, pretty open with LGBT stuff. I mean, art students are basically mostly like LGBT anyway, so like it'd be a shock if like you were in a class and there wasn't at least one person that was like LGBT in some sort of way. Every class I was in, there was always a bunch of people who were, and there were some people who did have like a lot of art based around that, and the professors had no problem with that. One of my professors was a lesbian. She literally mentioned she had a wife, and I was like, oh my gosh, good for her. So yeah, they don't have a problem with that. As long as you go to like a really nice school that's like not super anti this or whatever, then you should be fine. The main thing I regret is that I regret not having a backup plan. That's the main thing. I just regret not doing more to like build up other skills, and kind of just thinking that like I was gonna just sort of ride off the coattails of my art skills and just kind of get a job right out of college. And I think that's something that really held me back, because my ego. And I'm not saying that I think I'm the best artist in the world, but like, long story short, like I was treated like I was an art prodigy growing up, and it really messed with my self-esteem. Like, everyone was treating me like I was gonna do great things and shit, and like I was gonna be like this big artist. And then once I got to like college, that's when I realized, oh shit, I'm like not as good as I think I am. I mean, when I was in high school, I had that realization, because I remember I went to like this pre-college program, which is basically like a thing for high school students to go to when they experience college. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm not that good, really. Like, my art when I was a teenager was what you'd expect from a teenager. But yeah, so the ego thing was like a really hard thing to like overcome, because I was so used to everyone hyping me up in terms of my art that like realized that there's people who are way better than me and that my skills are like subpar in a lot of ways, and having to like realize that I can't just expect to get stuff was difficult. I know that I sound really entitled and like really full of myself, but like I said, I was treated like I was a prodigy for most of my life when I was just okay at art for my age. Like the art I made for my age is what you'd expect for like a kid. It was really hard to overcome that, because it's one of those things where it's really hard to realize that you're like not as special as you think you are, and that everyone else is like, you know, either better than you or like equally good as you, and you just gotta kind of realize that you gotta work hard just like everybody else. You can't just expect to get things handed to you. So yeah, and like I said, I'm aware that sounds very spoiled or whatever, but again, that's how I was treated growing up. And then one day there was a switch up, like, oh, why are you like this? And it's like, bruh, you guys treated me like I was a prodigy, and now you're expecting the prodigy artist to like not have an issue with ego. So that's a whole other story. Anyway, so I already mentioned what I learned, but the final question is about motivation. And motivation is just like one of those things where I had to kind of push myself a lot. Like there were definitely times where I was just not in the mood to draw. I was not in the mood to get stuff done. I just felt like I couldn't do it. But I think what motivated me was that this was what I was here for. You know, this is my dream, this is my passion, and that if I fail, you know, what am I gonna do? So I just kept going, because I'm like, I can't fail, because this is what I want to do, and I don't want to disappoint my younger self. Like that's really who I was working for. I was trying to like be the artist that my younger self wanted to be, pretty much. I wanted to be like, if my younger self saw what I made today, would she be happy? Chances are probably she would be surprised in a lot of ways, but I think she'll be happy. And that's the main thing I wanted to do, was to basically make it seem like as if I was pursuing what I wanted to be as a child. There were definitely a lot of things I wanted to do as a kid artistically, but maybe it wasn't the most realistic. But once I got to college, I realized, okay, yeah, I can do this, so this is definitely like a substitute. This will definitely make my childhood self happy. And yeah, so as long as I kept my younger self happy, you know, my inner younger self, and in terms of motivation, that's definitely what kept me going in a lot of ways. I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah. Moving on. So this is about newbie artists without portfolios, and unfortunately you do need a portfolio to like get into art school or college or whatever. Like you can't not have a portfolio. That's like the thing that gets you like in. So yeah, you're going to need a portfolio, and I'm going to keep this really brief because the portfolio stuff is like a whole thing. There's a lot of videos on like how to have a good portfolio, but generally speaking, you just gotta have like a lot of good stuff like for observational things, anatomy, and a sense of style and uniqueness as well. So it's not like you're just doing studies, but like you have a good grasp of like who you are as an artist. Each school will have like a different amount of like pieces to include, but generally it's like 15 to 20 or whatever, maybe a little less. But yeah, just have like a lot of stuff that's like observational studies and like a mix of that and like your personal art, unless they don't ask for personal art, but generally they will. And they'll also probably ask like what materials you used and the size of the artwork or whatever, maybe not. But yeah, just have like a good balance of like stuff that's realistic, observational, so you understand the fundamentals like lighting, shading, color theory, and then have your personal stuff so that way you have personality to show, so that way it's like you're not just like copying stuff just for the sake of copying. You know, you're not one of those artists. You have the technical skill and the creative skill. That is basically what a good portfolio makes. Okay, moving on. So this is the final question, asking what I've learned or what I feel like I've learned helped my creative process or changed it. Oh my gosh, creating has been like an expansion of my mind once I graduated college. Like I would say that I've gotten way better at creating stuff. It's definitely improved me a lot of ways, like in terms of things like planning, for example, thumbnailing. Now I used to kind of do it before, but like college like drilled it into me because I would have to make a shit ton of thumbnails for like each project I have to do. Sometimes it'd be like 60, and then we'd have to do like 3 to 6 like final sketches for like projects, and then you know we had to pick like the final. So that was one thing, was learning how to do thumbnails and final sketches, not just jumping right in. I still do that to this day though. I still jump in for like art things, but you know I've had to learn to plan. I can't just jump in all the time. I have to plan things out. I have to, you know, work things from the beginning. I'm very much like an impulsive person when it comes to my art. So reining it in sometimes is definitely a really good skill to have, because I think a lot of artists are kind of impulsive. They just like to get into the process of things and really see the final product, but you have to really work hard and plan things to get to the final product. You can't just jump in all the time. Sometimes you can, but it's not always going to be the best result if you don't plan things out. So that was one thing. And then also just like a creative process. Like I've learned different ways to like come up with ideas, like the list method, where you would list like 100 different things, or just a lot of things like associated with like the subject matter. Like for example, we get an assignment, and then like we have to list down like different things associated with that topic. And then the professor would tell us to not pick the first thing that came to mind, because that's usually the cliche idea. So we would have to pick the idea that wasn't cliche and then go with that, and that's what usually would help us make like really unique things. Like for example, something related to like, I don't know, the zodiac signs, you know, like for example, everyone's associated Gemini with twins, but like, you know, if you were to list something down, you had to find something else that wouldn't be associated with that, because that's the first idea, it's the most generic. So like I would have to constantly be like coming up with new ideas that aren't generic and something unique, and that helped me with like my idea processing. So it definitely helped me with my processing skills and like analyzing things, you know, problem solving. I also got faster at making art. Well, I will say now that like digitally I've gotten a little bit slower. I think it's just because I gotten so distracted, because in school, you know, I had to focus a lot more. Like I would listen to music while I drew stuff, but like after graduating, because I had nothing to do, I had no homework, I would just kind of be watching YouTube videos and stuff, so I got distracted a lot. But yeah, like I did get faster at some points, you know, and again, I improved like painting and other materials. I also think like exposure to different artists gave me ideas and like inputs into like what their processes were like, and like how I could incorporate something like how they think, or what they do with their art, and how they get inspiration into my art. And I think that's another reason why going to college can be so worth it for being an artist, because it exposes you to things that you wouldn't think of. Because that is like one thing that a lot of people don't mention, is that it exposes you to things that you wouldn't expose yourself to if you weren't in college. Because when you're not in college, when you're like a self-taught artist just learning from like the same sources, you tend to be in a bubble, and that's where like your style might stagnate a bit. That's where like you might not know a lot of stuff or whatever. But once you like expand things, that's when your art really starts to improve, because that's how my art started to improve, and that's when I got into different types of art. That's when I started to like learn different things and whatnot, because that's where my brain expanded, because I allowed myself to like different styles of art that wasn't just like anime or cartoony stuff. I like stuff that's like realistic or trippy or weird. I like surrealism. I like collage art. I really love like mixed media things and sculptures. Like I started to fall in love with that sort of thing more, because I got exposed to it. And now like on Instagram, for example, I'm seeing a lot of these stuff on my feeds where before I probably wouldn't have liked it, but now I'm like in love with it. I want to do more stuff. Like I've gotten more motivated to do craftier things. I've gotten more motivation to try different mediums and to try new like ideas for art, instead of just like doing traditional art or digital art. I want to do mixed media stuff. I want to like make sculptures. I want to do all these things now because I got exposure to it in school. So yeah, to end this video off, I want to say that it is worth it. If you have the money, you have the time, you have the finances, you have the motivation, and you have the objective to like do it, then sure. But if you do not have like the direction to go in life, if you do not have any of those things, I don't recommend it. There's a video that I watched that really goes in depth with like what it's like being a student from like a Cal Art student perspective. I'll link it in the description. It's a really good video. I watched it. I love it. But yeah, like being an art student can be hard, but it does expose you to a lot of things. It does like allow you to meet other people. You learn things that you probably would have learned maybe if you were self-taught, but like some things like when you're self-taught, you kind of don't learn because you're avoiding them, since it's like too serious, too businessy, too not artsy and fun. But that's the thing about art college, is that it kind of reins you in, it settles you down, and it like exposes you to the realities of being an artist. It's not always going to be fun. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. You're going to have to struggle a lot. You're going to have to do a lot of businessy stuff. You got to like do work. It's going to be work. That's the thing that a lot of people need to realize. It's work. It's not always going to be fun. You're not always going to have fun drawing. You're going to have to struggle a bit. You're going to have to hate your art sometimes. You're going to have to draw things you don't want to draw. But if you really, truly want to do it, if you really want to be passionate about it, then you're going to have to realize that this is the reality that comes with it. That's what being an artist is all about. It's not always going to just be the fun stuff. You have to accept the hard, not so fun stuff with the fun stuff as an artist. So, yeah. Overall, I don't regret going to art college. I just wish that my financial aid kicked in a little bit more, because it really sucked a lot of ways, and it made the debt thing a lot harder, unfortunately. I'm not gonna say how much I'm in debt, because it's a little embarrassing. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. It was a little all over the place, but I try my best to answer every question. If you have more questions in the comments, I'll try my best to answer them, but if there's a lot of comments, then I'm not sure I'll get to everybody, but I'll try my best. So yeah, Merry Christmas, and good luck to anyone who wants to be an art student, and I'll see you quacks later.
Have you ever had that dream of reaching for the stars? Of being an amazing artist that crafts and creates, so lost in debt makes going to college hard. College gets a or scholarship, but you'll be paying a lot. Student debt will ruin your life.